Hey my dudes, we gotta talk about the Elden Ring expansion and everything that the PvP community needs from it. See, the thing is, Elden Ring PvP is missing a lot of shit that it probably should have, okay? And it's dragging the whole experience down. My theory on why this is that maybe From Software wasn't done with development in time, so they had to cut some corners to get it released, and PvP got most of those corner cuts. Unfortunate, either way, that's just my theory, but we're going to talk about everything we need today. Why would this stuff come from the expansion, you may ask? Well, I think we're done with patches for the most part before the expansion comes out. Usually when they drop an expansion, there is a patch and they do fix some stuff. And honestly, after the expansion, I don't think they're going to be patching the game for much longer than that. That's just, proven by historical fact with From Software. So the DLC is basically our only hope. Well, before we get into it, like and subscribe if you're cool, dislike if you dislike it, or just don't do any of that. It'll be fine either way. Now, you're probably going to notice that most of the stuff I'm talking about is fundamental changes to the PvP system in Elden Ring, because that's mostly what's wrong with it. The actual combat, the gameplay, feels better than it ever has, I think. Way better than Dark Souls 3. That's just my opinion. But the problems with this game are pretty much systemic. Now, are we going to get all this stuff that I'm asking for in this video? Most certainly not, but we can hope for some stuff. The first and most important thing I need to talk about is 6-player limit. Elden Ring is limited to 4 players per session. Now, this is kind of a disaster for many reasons, the biggest reason being in the past games we had 6 players. Now, it is just infinitely more fun to play with 6 players in a match. Okay, the 4-player limit limits you to either 1 invader versus 3 gankers, or 2 invaders versus 2 gankers. It's just not the same. It lacks the same soul, the same high-octane energy that 6-player limit had in Dark Souls 3. In Dark Souls 3, you could have, 3v3, 2v4. It was so good. It was so good. We didn't know what we had, and now we need it for this game. I understand that this may be difficult to do because Elden Ring is such a big game. If it can't be done for the whole game, could we at least have some, isolated areas where 6-player limit is possible? That would be good enough for me, honestly. Like I said, 6-player limit is literally the most important one. If From Software only did this change, it would save Elden Ring PvP forever. People would play it for years to come. Because this was the thing that made Dark Souls 3 last so long. People played Dark Souls 3 for 6 years while they waited for Elden Ring. And like I said, that's entirely because it was so much fun with 6-player limit. We don't have that right now. And I'm afraid that if we don't get it, the game is going to just fall off way earlier than it should. Also, I do have to mention the 4-player limit just completely destroyed fight clubs. Fight clubs are literally impossible, and that is an integral part of the PvP experience. We need that back. So please, if anything on this list, anything in this video happens, 6-player limit, please. The next and second most important thing I'm going to talk about today is covenants. Elden Ring is one of the only modern Souls games that doesn't have covenants or something equivalent to it. Now, covenants gave you a incentive to do PvP, basically. They had rewards. Think of Dark Moon Blade, think of Gravelord's Sword Dance, stuff like that. Now, a lot of people need that incentive to do PvP. Granted, there is a very large section, myself included, that will just do PvP because it's fun. But again, a lot of people won't even try PvP. And even if they try it, they won't continue to do it if there's no rewards. That is a huge problem for Elden Ring. Not having covenants also takes away from the role-playing aspect. A lot of people liked covenants because they were like choosing your faction, honestly. It was like choosing your team, basically. We have nothing like that now. It is absolutely tragic. Covenants are an integral part of PvP, and I really want them to come back. If anything, we could get something similar to Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 had the best covenants. They were diverse, they were fun. Please, can we just get something like that? Next thing I gotta talk about is Taunter's Tongue. Could we get a version of the Taunter's Tongue that doesn't cater to coward bitches? The issue with Taunter's Tongue currently is that it's the only way to have two invaders in the same world. So gankers will often use the Taunter's Tongue to lure in invaders because they want to cheese the invaders, because they're bad at the game. Then when one invader shows up, they turn off the Taunters, so another one can't come. That is just absolute coward bitch energy, and it shouldn't be a thing. Also, I do have to mention there are hosts who lure invaders with the Taunters, and they stand in places where the invader can't get to without a horse. So they basically just farm runes off of invaders because the invaders can't get to them. Also, sometimes they'll have blues come into the world, and the blues can't do anything either. It's just absolute cancer. The way that you fix this is to make Taunter's Tongue only switch on or off at the Grace. That way they can't just stand wherever they want or hide somewhere inaccessible, or they can't wait for an invader to show up to turn it off. They have to choose, do I want it on at the Grace or do I want it off at the Grace? That's how you fix this. This would be a significant improvement to PvP. Also, could we stop prioritizing Taunter's Tongue worlds in the matchmaking so heavily? The thing is, even if there's 1,000 regular organic invasions, the game will send you to the one Taunter's host. Honestly, this gets really annoying because most invaders want organic invasions. We want to fight people that are actually trying to progress through the game. That's the entire point of invasions. That's why we exist. So when the game just keeps giving you solo hosts that are using taunters or gankers over and over again, it really sucks. Now, nobody really minds those things every now and then, but it just happens over and over again because of the way matchmaking prioritizes taunters now. It's really not fun. Most invaders want organic invasions. Most invaders want to be an obstacle to progress. Most invaders want to be an enemy in the level. That's what most of us want. The people using taunters are not trying to progress the game. They're just standing there, trying to cheese invaders. And it gets old. Next thing I gotta talk about is solo host invasions without Taunter's Tongue, because they're not really in the game as is. Now, I'll be the first to admit that solo host invasions are, generally speaking, extremely boring. See, invaders want the thrill of fighting more than one person. They want to be outnumbered. That's what makes it so rewarding when you win, and that's the core of the fun of invasions. So, solo host invasions are just easy 99% of the time, and they feel underwhelming. They almost feel like a chore or an annoyance. That being said, solo host invasions are kinda sorta a necessary evil, you could say. The game is just gonna keep getting deader and deader until there's basically no organic groups to invade anymore. That's why we need the occasional solo host invasion in the mix. Also, I do have to say, new invaders need those solo host invasions to learn. If you just throw them to ganks right off the bat, gank after gank, they're just gonna give up because they're not ready for that. They have to go through solo hosts first before they can learn how to deal with gankers. In a nutshell, the game needs solo host invasions, whether we like it or not. And I'm not talking about Taunter's host, solo hosts. No, those guys are deliberately trying to get invaded. That automatically makes it not really an invasion. And most of them are just standing at the bonfire, doing nothing, waiting for invaders to cheese in fake duels with their double heals and their rune arc. That is just not an invasion. What I'm proposing here is a system where hosts don't necessarily have to opt in to get invaded solo. It should be more or less a consequence of using a powerful item, such as the rune arc. It sure is a good thing Dark Souls 3 showed us how this system should work already. Back then, if you used an Ember, you could get invaded solo. That should be the same case with Elden Ring, except instead of the Ember, it's the rune arc. Now, the rune arc offers a whole bunch of advantages that make getting invaded over it pretty worth it, honestly. It's a nice trade-off. Now, I understand that Michael Zaki said that they couldn't get the horse to work in PvP, and that's the reason that there's no solo invasions, because they'd have to kick the host off the horse when they got invaded. Fine. Fair enough, then let's only allow solo invasions if the host is inside a dungeon or some kind of interior where the horse isn't allowed, and they have the rune arc active. That's the perfect system right there. Now this next part pretty much just comes hand in hand with what I just said, but just get rid of the fur calling remedy. It makes absolutely no sense to have that in the game, when the rune arc could just serve that purpose, okay? The rune arc should be the gateway to all of the online features, whether it's summoning, whether it's getting invaded, then we have the perfect system. No more need for the fur calling remedy, it was a mistake, simply put. Also, I think that these solo invasions should get the lowest priority in matchmaking. Invaders don't really want to deal with them unless they're new invaders, and hosts by themselves just aren't much of a threat to an invader, even if they're pretty good at PvP. They're just not. Next thing I want to talk about is how to fix the fog wall problem in Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, they're absolutely rampant. I'd say 25% of the time when you invade at some level brackets, it's gonna be instantly host has entered the boss room, returning to your world. And it is infuriating to stand there looking for an invasion, get into the world, and have it send you home immediately. Now, I don't know why it's so bad in this game. I feel like it's because of the way the game is laid out. So how can we fix that? It's fairly simple, actually. Now, like I said, I don't know the exact reason for this problem, but my main theory is the way some of the game is laid out. In the late game especially, there are what I call fog wall gauntlets, where there's just boss fog, back to back, with not a whole lot of level in between. And when you invade these areas, it seems like it tends to be an instant fog wall, or just miserable to invade in general. So the way we fix this problem is to allow invaders to opt out of invading certain areas of the game. For example, you don't like invading Farum Azula. You should be able to opt out of that place entirely. There should be some kind of list at the Grace that you can check off to make your worldwide invasion option not search those areas. It is that simple. The next thing I gotta mention is the spawn points for invasions. They're so bad. They're so comically bad. I don't know how they ended up like that. The game will straight up spawn you across the map from the host, while the host is at the boss fog. And there's absolutely no way for you to get to the host in time. Sometimes it spawns you in the open field, in a place where you literally cannot reach the host. And all you have in these situations is the phantom fingers to use to try to fix the problem, and a lot of the time they don't, so it's just a wasted invasion. I don't know why the spawns are so bad. Just fix them, please. Like, we really need to fix these spawns, because they're resulting in a lot of wasted time, wasted invasions, and frustration that makes people give up. The final major issue I want to talk about today is the L2 problem. Now, I know that sounds kind of strange right off the bat, but hear me out. L2 has become a disease that rots the brains of players until they can only press L2. I get summoned in this game sometimes, and I see hosts and other phantoms just going through the entire game pressing L2, and it makes me so sad. Back in my day, we swung our weapons. We pressed R1, we pressed R2. Also, I just gotta say, when an invader invades a gank squad, they can just press L2 for a year. It's too overpowered and too spammable. They can send this giant wall of hitbox at you that just prevents you from playing the game, and it is insufferable. L2 is too damn strong right now. It honestly does not seem like I'm the only person that thinks this is a problem. I've heard similar things from a lot of players. A lot of people are tired of it. Now, there's two main issues with Ashes of War. One, they do 1 billion damage for basically no risk. And two, they are too spammable. They just don't cost enough blue. Now, how can we fix them? How can we make them more balanced in PvP? Well, you can either tone down the damage in PvP or make them cost more blue. I would lean to the side of making them cost more blue in PvP and PvE because they're so cheap to cast. It's just ridiculous. You don't even need to think about it. Just make the offensive Ashes of War cost 2 or 3 times the blue that they cost now. That's it. That fixes the problem. Then people have to think before they spam. It becomes more like a super move that people have to plan for. And that's great. That's how they should be. Well, that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching my video. Most of the things I proposed in this video are community ideas. I didn't come up with most of them. A couple of them I did, but most of them, no. If you agree with any of this, be sure to spread the word. I didn't make this video for the developers to watch. They're not watching my videos. I'm not that big of a deal. But since you're watching the video, if you agree with this stuff, you can spread the word to help PvP.